Hi, I'm Sofia and I've been on the Systems platform for term one. I'll introduce myself briefly before going on to present my work for this term. I'm a lingerie designer by background and I graduated from LCF this July. So I'll start with provocation one, which was set by Graham Wayburn to provoke us to hack our practices by changing up methods and tools. I run an underwear brand under my own label to support myself through this course, so I decided to use a classic corset pattern that I sell as a mock-up as I knew it needed some improvement. I learned Clo 3D, which was useful for mocking up pattern shapes rapidly. I made these artworks as part of our first project, Identity Material Hope, and I tested them out as prints. I also tried out a new pattern by scanning it in from a book and mocking it up on paper. And then I did some rapid lace placement mock-ups as well. At this point in the term, I began working on a project called the Moda Sustainability Challenge, for which I presented at Barcelona Fashion Week in November. I applied to the challenge as I'm interested in sustainable design practice and educating myself in this area. I was put into a group with 3 other women from across Europe to come up with a closed-loop product or service under the theme of industrial symbiosis. We came up with a speculative project called Linger on Matter, a play on the word lingerie. We designed a piezoelectric bodysuit that I rendered here on Clo 3D to harness the energy of movement and sound that human beings make. The bodysuit could be used to detect hormonal changes in women or self-power large events such as the Olympics. The project was a really good experience for me in terms of speculative thinking and collaboration, neither of which I'd really done before. I'm talking about the Moda Challenge as it influenced my thinking for Provocation 2 by Ryan Beveridge. We were asked to limit our practice in some way. I was thinking about something that a Grand Challenge lecturer said to us, which is that plastic should be treated as precious because it takes a really long time to biodegrade. Coming to the RCA has radically changed my thinking and given me the feeling that I can redesign the way that we live. So I was walking around doing shopping and buying coffee, and I was looking at all the plastic waste that we use and create, and I was thinking that this is really an issue of design, so I wanted my response to the provocation to turn the way we treat plastics on its head. I was also thinking about industrial symbiosis and the idea of hyperlocality, so I came up with the limitation statement: can I make a garment out of local waste from a different industry? I walked around my local area chatting to shopkeepers and eventually chose Sainsbury's as I wanted to use something really mundane and something that there was a lot of. I wanted to try and treat the material with care and see if I could make it precious. I used the new corset pattern from Provocation 1 and started in Clo, which you can see here. I made the corset in plastic by itself first and didn't find it particularly interesting visually, so I decided to make 2 and fill one with fresh flowers and one with dried flowers, which is a nod to my mother, whose garden the flowers are from. Here are some of the final outcomes of the corsets, which I also developed into a hat. I applied to the eyewear competition as well as the project centred around the use of recycled acetate, which is in keeping with my current theme of recycling plastics. I researched native British flowers I could include in the glasses and was lucky enough to be shortlisted for the eyewear competition. So I've now begun prototyping in acrylic and have been inducted in CNC. I'm planning to experiment with recycled acetate and also mould making to pour resin and set the flowers inside. I'm now going to show a short video of my work for these 2 provocations.
Brindo este amor, un amor tan raro. Brindo este amor, un amor tan claro. Brindo este amor, un amor tan de repente. Brindo este amor, un amor tan diferente. Como la oncita en el mar, un elemento nuevo para jugar.
I've been trying to map my own system in preparation for this assessment. Louise asked me in my tutorial why I came to the RCA and to think about how I could move forward with my practice. Some of the main reasons are to do with inclusivity and ethics, experimenting with materials, expressing myself, collaborating, practicing more sustainably, and trying to understand myself better. I summarise some personal and social considerations, what I want and need in my practice, and how I'd like to operate in the world. I mapped out my current system, my source materials, products, production, selling, citizens, and my product end of life. I then looked at every step of my system and thought about the main issues for each part. I prioritised 2 elements that I think I could work on for next term: materials and end of life. I've been thinking about my materials, my current materials, what I've been doing at the RCA this term, and what I'd like to continue with. I'd like to experiment with knitted underwear as outerwear garments, as I'm attracted to how locally the yarns can be sourced and the delicacy of knitwear. I also like that it's a natural fibre, it's stretch and can biodegrade. Another idea I'd like to experiment with on the idea of an industrial symbiosis is to use food waste as resource for biomaterials. Lastly, I think I'd like to experiment with piezoelectric yarns. For next term, I'm planning to bring more of my personal experience into the work because I feel that's something that's been missing for me this term. I've had an on and off eating disorder since my teenage years, and I'm currently writing about that in my CHS. I'm also writing about my recovery, and I'm training to be a yoga teacher at the moment. The embodiment and relationship to sensation that yoga has brought me give me a deep sense of well-being and joy, which I want to express and communicate in my work. All of this is very relevant and tied into my relationship and practice with fashion and clothing, which is, in my opinion, an embodied art form. I want to explore in my fashion practice my interest in the duality between appearance and reality, seeing and feeling, inside and out, objectification and embodiment, visible and invisible worlds. I'm interested in the relationship of the phenomenal to time, the experience of the self as infinite, and its relation to embodiment, and how I can explore this visually. In yoga, we talk about bringing light, life and sensation to dead areas of the body to still and quiet the mind, to still time through movement and attention, and to create energy. All of these themes seem to correlate to the potentials of piezoelectric yarn worn on the body: light, energy, electricity, movement. One of the ideas that I had for working with piezoelectric yarn is to do a performance where I'd be moving in a piezoelectric bodysuit in the dark, and it would be powering some sort of light, either worn on my body or as a separate arrangement. I've included here a reference to a Japanese performance artist called Atsuko Tanaka, who was doing something quite similar in the 1950s. I'll leave you with this quote from a CHS lecture on temporality that I was quite inspired by. "The self is an ocean without a shore. Gazing upon it has no beginning or end in this world or the next."